even in a loss, it does feel like the Philadelphia Eagles can take a lot of positive things from that loss of the Washington Commanders. Stock up, stock down, coming your way in this Tuesday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Louis DiBiase joined as always by Gino Camilleri. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Happy holidays, everybody. Continuing to recap Eagles Commanders. The Eagles' first loss in, over almost 3 months? Unbelievable.
Yeah,
a 10-game win streak was snapped. And so it's hard to, even Gino, like going back and watching the game, it's hard to complain about a lot of things from that matchup. We even said on the post-game show we're not going to make any grand, big picture statements from this game. And going back and watching it, I was actually more encouraged. I don't like taking moral victories in the NFL, of course, and it was an important game to have, right, to stay in the 1-seed race, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, I actually was more encouraged when I watched that game that despite all the injuries, and I thought some really bad calls from referees. I'm not the ref guy that goes after refs, but I thought it was a bad performance from referees, at least on the Eagles side in that game. Losing your quarterback, a lot of defensive players, a rare performance where your defense is giving up a lot of yards. You still almost beat a playoff team with an elite quarterback, right, that was playing elite, at least in that game. It took one final possession for them to win that game. So I think that shows a lot that even when things are going really just not your way in a football game, you still almost won. So I don't know. I think that was, again, I hate to say the word moral victory, but at least after watching the game, I kind of had that takeaway from it.
One of the things I always talk about is... I always say always talk about when I say always and never, 2 words I hate to use. Sometimes on the show, I talk about the idea of going from good to great. This felt like a game where a good team played on the field for 60 minutes, and if they had a great team on the field, they probably would have won that game. If you look at the offensive line, look at the first quarter. They were humming, man. They were going to town, absolutely eviscerating this opposition on Washington. And then as the quarters went on, Lou, they started to make some mistakes. They didn't seem to be in sync. Those little things in this type of game will hurt you. The defense, that 12-man on the field, things like that, that's going to hurt you. Allowing Washington to start most of their drives beyond the 30 by allowing Luke McCaffrey to continue to field the ball, those little things, and then the penalties as well. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, all these little things will escalate to keep you from getting to that great precipice. And this was a good game. It was a good game, man. You still put up 338 total yards, even after Kenny Pickett comes into the game.
30 points.
Jaden Daniels had a boatload of second half drives, Lou. The Eagles went 3 for 16 on third down. They went 3 for 3 on fourth down, but still, less than half the time they're converting to keep drives going.
Right.
If Jalen's in that game, how much of that changes?
They win the game. Yeah,
how little
100%.
is the defense actually on the field as opposed to what they were on the field this time around? How much easier is it for them to run their offense the way that they were running it in the first 6 minutes of the game? Lou, I went back and watched it. Lou, Jalen wasn't even in the game for 7 minutes. He was not in the game for 7 minutes.
It was, the first 2 drives, and
yes,
that's it. And by the way, they
barely.
were absolutely cooking. Jalen Hurts, the passing game was a little slow to get started, but the run game was completely dominating. And
there was a great run call from Kellen Moore there, man. The perfectly timed draw.
Exactly.
It's unfortunate, and that's the reason why I think you and I keep going back to it, because even when the wheels fell off, as opposed to last year, like the San Francisco game where you just rolled over and died, and the Dallas game where you rolled over and died, it didn't really feel like they rolled over and died. It felt like Washington just played a great game when they needed to in those moments. Yeah, they turned the ball over 5 times, of course, but contextually in football, comes down to just a few plays. When the Eagles don't convert any points getting the ball in plus territory right before halftime, Lou, that Jake Elliott field goal, a foot and a half short, that was the difference in the game, man. Like, those little things add up, and that was what happened on Sunday.
a game that's uncharacteristic of the Eagles still resulted, again, in as many yards as you mentioned, 30-plus points, 5 turnovers. You could even say 6 because they got a 4th down stop in the first quarter. And that's like your quote-unquote bad game.
Yeah.
And it was against
36 minutes with the ball. Like, that's still very good.
A quarterback that was on fire in Jaden Daniels. You still only lost because of a couple weird drops from stars. You still would have overcome losing your quarterback, a defensive performance that wasn't great from their standards. They've been the best defense in football over the last 2 months. So that's why, for me, it was almost impressive that it took that much for, and again, just like on the show the other day, I don't want to discredit what Jaden Daniels did. Like, he showed, all right, this is going to be a problem. If there's a round 3 in the playoffs, that's going to be a fight for sure. And this rivalry is definitely back on with the Commanders. But I think it was impressive that the Eagles, like, it took that much to beat this football team. So I don't know. I actually, like, when I watched the game back, I was like, yeah, you put Jalen Hurts in that football game. I'm not worried if, again, come playoff time, it's like the Commanders are here. We're, shaking in our boots. I'm not really thinking that way.
I did text my college roommate who was a Washington fan, and those years we were watching those battles, it was like Sam Bradford and just a whole bunch of nobodies.
Do you know what this game reminded me of, though? The 2014, when Deshaun Jackson came back, and it was just a back and forth, like, this brawl. That's kind of what this game felt like, and it's kind of that rivalry back, which is fun.
And I texted my roommate, I said, Whitey, I am so glad that we get 2 quarterbacks that are going to make this rivalry fun once again, because this is not the last or the first time you're going to see one of these battles between the two, and I can't wait till they play 60 minutes. He's a dog, and those are the type of guys you're going to have to worry about in the playoffs, and that's what the NFC playoffs is going to come down to, Lou. It's going to come down to scrappy quarterbacks that might not be the Josh Allens, might not be the Pat Mahomes, but Baker Mayfield and Tampa Bay. They just beat you last year in the playoffs. That's a team that you can never truly say die. Look at what Jordan Love is doing with the Packers right now.
Packers look good.
Jared Goff is playing out of his mind. Sam Darnold is playing out of his mind. You're going to have to beat competent and good and athletic quarterbacks too, Lou.
Yeah,
that's one of the things. If we're going to say anything stock down, it's defending the mobile quarterback run game, man, and we'll talk more about that as we go on. But unlike 3 months ago, when we came on the show and were heated after the Tampa game, after the Falcons game, we were just waiting to see how they would respond. They turned the next chapter in the book, and they won 10 straight. And they had one game where they lost in 3 months by 3 points to a division opponent where your quarterback one was on the field for 6.5 minutes. Yeah. Let's just breathe a little bit after that one. I know people like to get a little outlandish and say things just because we have to, but I'm not going to say anything here that's going to just start a fire. There really is no reason to, and there were still some really good performances out there, man. I thought the Eagles, when they needed to have plays on defense, here comes Reed Blankenship again. And when Chauncey was in the game, he's around the football and gets a opportune pick, and they're forcing multiple fumbles. Those things are going to continue to go your way.
Yeah, there was a lot of good. I mean, Gino, 9 times out of 10 in a football game, if you have over 30 points, the total yardage they had where Saquon Barkley's ripping off, you had another 60-plus yard rushing touchdown. You have 5-6 forced turnovers in the game where you flip the field on defense. Normally you win that game, but you had, again, some weird drops from the best of the best. You had a rare bad special teams game when it comes to like kickoff coverage, and then a game where
a rare
maybe
bad
that's
special
not rare,
teams game.
The
Michael Clay is like 3 out of 4 seasons.
This year though, we haven't seen teams starting at the 40 every single time like Washington was, and it took all of that and an elite performance from Jaden Daniels to hold things off. So I think in that way, it's a silver lining that, again, if they have to play the Commanders in the first round, you should still be feeling pretty confident about that matchup. We'll continue to get into the positive stock up coming your way right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs, they're almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So just take the over on Saquon Barkley rushing yards. If that $5 bet wins, you get $250 back in bonus bets. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown, like Saquon, like Jalen Hurts, how many points each team will score. All that and more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and, of course, the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, so the Eagles finally did lose a game on Sunday against the Commanders, but Gino, as we said, there's a lot of positives to take from that football game, and you kind of started this off by hinting at the defense a little bit. Like when Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was in that game, he looked good, had a big-time interception in the first half. Reed Blankenship, yet another clutch interception in the fourth quarter that should have ended the football game if Devontae Smith catches that pass, which he does 9.9 out of 10 times, right? And I think there was a lot of individual performances, despite the yardage the defense gave up, that you can feel good about. And the number one guy that when I rewatched, that I came away saying, this guy's becoming a star, is Nolan Smith. He had another sack, 6.5 on the year, 2 fumble recoveries. He has taken that step, and we knew he was going to be a motor guy, like a high floor player with the athleticism. He's good against the run, but you're seeing he's developing counter moves in the pass rush. You're seeing power moves. The speed and the bend we already knew was there, but he's bull rushing tackles now. Nolan, the development has skyrocketed, I feel like, since the bye week. It's really impressive to watch.
And to have a consistent element that's staying on the field, right? Because Josh Sweat was banged up for most of that game too. So it's Jalix Hunt, and on the other side, it's Nolan Smith.
Jalix, I thought, had a good game too, by the way. He had 4 pressures.
And then Charles Harris came in there, and it's like, oh man, this guy is so low. But Bryce Huff, it was nice to have him back. He was definitely hopping around there. We'll see how things continue to progress here, but they need to have Nolan. I mean, they need to have him, Lou. He is turning into what you needed Josh Sweat to kind of evolve into a little bit earlier. The timeline with Josh Sweat, it took a few more years. Nolan Smith, it's year 3, and it's really happening. Everything is kind of coming together now.
2, right? Only year 2.
Oh, year 2. My goodness, dude. I get all these... Georgia Davis. Yeah, the Georgia guys, you flip them all over. But you're talking about year 2 of a guy who really was almost a redshirt to an extent in his first season. The use of hands, his ability to understand that he is smaller so he can out-leverage a lot of these bigger tackles on an island. That's how he's figuring out how to win, using his contact balance, using his ability to just... I mean, he can do the limbo on his shoulders.
Dude, his shoulder looks like it's touching the ground at times when he's bending around tackles.
Yeah, he's like those speed skaters in the Olympics that are parallel to the ice almost. That's what you wanted Nolan to be. You didn't want him to just be a fastball type of guy who can only play third downs. And what he's doing in the run as well, Lou, that's his biggest bonus right now. He is a 3-down player. He could play every down for you, and when you need to get a sack, he's going to be around the quarterback, if not getting him off his spot, getting a hand to the QB.
I think, too, we had a show in the offseason where, okay, are you going to replace Haason Reddick this year? One player? Probably not. But there's a lot of guys that have the potential to get close. Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith. Of course, we know what Brandon Graham is and was heading into this year. I think the ideal scenario did play out, though. Of the guys you wanted to have a quote-unquote breakout year, even though Josh Sweat's bouncing back from last year, if anyone was going to carry this unit, we thought it would probably be Sweat or Huff, but it's ideal that it is Nolan Smith. I think this is perfect that he's kind of becoming the alpha at this spot because he's the one you've got long-term that you invested a first-round pick in, and I think has the most upside at his age and with considering his traits.
And he's a homegrown talent who is this hybrid type of player on the edge that Vic Fangio likes to utilize.
Yeah.
Kind of would... I would assume he would have been a draft pick if Vic Fangio was here, and he would have loved him either way when they selected him, Lou. But Howie Roseman, to understand that this guy's going to take a little bit to develop, and we have the guys in-house now, and we have the coaches there to develop him, heck yeah.
And sorry, Howie mentioned Nolan by name this offseason too when he talked about being more patient with young players. Nolan was the guy he was talking about. He kind of took that away from the Tampa playoff game last year. So I really think the patience has paid off for sure. And I'd say stock up too to Josh Sweat had a good game before he got hurt. Jalix Hunt had, I think, 3 or 4 pressures in that second half. He was getting to Jaden Daniels. So I do think the edge rushers, like you said in segment 1, they got to finish against these mobile quarterbacks. That's definitely a stock down area of conversation. But I think the edge rushers, this was the part of the team at the trade deadline. You're Do they have enough? Then BG goes down, Bryce Huff's not playing, and yet they're still getting production. So I think that's been a nice surprise.
And the reason I was thinking that Nolan Smith was 3 years out of Georgia was because I was also going to add stock up to Jordan Davis.
Yeah.
You can pinpoint the moment in the game that he was no longer there.
So
it
true.
was night and day.
Yeah, because the run game really got going for Washington. Yeah, you're so right.
Night and day, Lou.
Yeah.
They could not hold two gaps with one guy. It really became like almost we had to change up our scheme to an extent to just single lane gap rush here because we don't have this big guy to hold multiple gaps and anchor for us.
Yep.
It really took off when Jordan Davis went out of that game. It was an instant impact. The linebackers can't play as fast and free because they don't know where their landmark is going to be because the guys are getting just pushed off their mark, and hats off to Washington for identifying that and sticking to their run game. Look at what Jaden Daniels did towards the end of the game, Lou. A lot of those runs came up right through the middle. Like, what happens if Jordan Davis is there? So the kid continues to develop in year 3. These young Georgia Bulldogs are all maniacs. Jalen Carter is just a legitimate psychopath. He is so smart. He knows where the ball is all the time. When he harnesses that Hulk-like energy, there is nobody better
now
than
he's
this
calling
guy.
out plays.
That's what I mean.
Fumble, where he stripped Brian Robinson, he called saying the lineman's going to pull here. All he had to do was shed that side block, strips the ball.
Sees he's sitting on his feet, a little light, sitting back, show he's going to pull. Like, those are the things you don't just learn those.
He's going to catch
do
one of
learn
these snaps,
those.
by the way, too. He's going to catch one of these spikes at some point, dude. I'm guaranteeing it. But
Those are the things that you have to study hours and hours and hours of tape and have somebody that's advanced scouting for you as well. Those things where you know where their feet are set, what the play is going to be. Why this defense can play so fast, free, and on their toes is because of how instinctual all of these guys are. I know it wasn't Vic Fangio's best performance at the end of this game, but in the beginning of these games, especially the first quarter, the last 2 weeks, Lou, against Pittsburgh, against Washington, what did Washington do on the first 3 drives? Turnover on downs, they had the fumble, and then they go 3 and out.
I thought, looking back, Gino, it was more personnel mistakes. Like, I thought Zach Bond, there were a couple times in zone, he was handing off players to nobody, and they were just in the wrong spot.
Send them to grass, yeah.
There's certain communication issues, and I think you even said it earlier, like if Jalen Hurts is playing, the defense probably isn't on the field as much as they were, and you saw a lot of the injuries. I think guys just kind of got gassed, and they lost a lot of players. Jordan Davis went down at some point. Josh Sweat, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think gets wrongfully thrown out of this football game. So I think the defense had to deal with a lot, and I'm not really concerned about what happened in that second half.
No, this is only the second time all season that they've allowed over 30 points this year. So this isn't something to really get up in arms about. There were some... Why are we playing off zone when we should be playing man bump towards the end?
I agree.
Like every time they show Quignon and he's not in phase with a corner, he's playing off probably 99 out of 100 times.
And Darius Slay, too, was having a really... I know there was the one...
All of them were. The defense really was having a good game.
That was the best I've ever seen Darius Slay hit. Like, he was physical on the outside, too.
Yeah, that one stretch where it was like he tackles out on the island there, and it was physical, and then he has the pass breakup. He was just around the ball all day long. And
yeah. So there was still positives from the defense, man. That's why I'm not like...
Jaden Daniels to go freaking berserker
he went nuclear
man.
In the second. And sometimes, too, like... You got to say respect, like to the star. I mean, that was just a quarterback doing some incredibly elite things.
You know what it was, Lou? You know what it was?
It's hard to get mad sometimes with that.
The Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen performance last year. Like, Josh played out of his mind in that game.
And you're saying the Bills probably win this game, but the other quarterback went nuclear. And
Jalen Hurts went like Kamehameha mode, man. Like he went Super Saiyan without a doubt there, and that's what you have to look at as well. But Fangio has to figure out these late game situations if there is one thing. Like, we can't just be allowing teams to go down the field. That was what killed us, and we hated Schwartz for in 2018. I mean, even when he came there from his inception
and
to
this
the
what
end.
happened against, this isn't just the Falcons game where it happened, but the Carolina game too. Tampa, the Panthers game, Bryce Young got down the field way too easy. And I don't know if it's like when they know they only have to stop a touchdown, they allow more yardage in front. Maybe if it's a field goal game, they play more aggressive. But again, when you have the personnel, like I would understand it if it was Jalen Mills or, all those corners back in the day that you don't trust in these situations, right? And even then I got upset with Jim Schwartz. But you have the personnel where there's no excuse to be having Quinyon Mitchell playing 15 yards off the ball when it's 2nd and 7. You know what I mean? So that was definitely something you got to fix because this personnel, like they can do it. I mean, why?
I think he was just a little scared when both of them got beat in man coverage when they were just playing that single high look. But just remember, dude, it's a long season. That was the first time both of them have gotten beat in a long time.
Yeah,
for Q, it was the first time all year he's gotten beat.
It took over 500 coverage snaps for Quinyon Mitchell to give up a touchdown.
Burned deep.
Before we take a break and go to stock down, real quick too. Stock up to, obviously, Saquon Barkley in a vacuum, but his explosive home run ability is what I want to focus on, Gino. He, this year, tied the NFL history, the most 60-plus yard rushing touchdowns at 4 with Adrian Peterson and Jim Brown. You have a Deshaun Jackson-like weapon in the backfield right now where, even LaShawn McCoy, you knew, any moment he could turn a 3-yard hole into a 15, 20-yard run, right? But Saquon's doing things that you used to be used to Deshaun Jackson doing where anytime he touches the football, he could go to the house. I've never seen that from an Eagles running back. That is such an advantage to have heading into the playoffs where, you want that from receivers, right? But you're getting that from a guy in the backfield. Again, that touchdown, that 60-plus yard touchdown he had against Washington was 4th this year. The 4th touchdown of 60-plus yards, the most in NFL history. That's unbelievable. And that was with Jalen Hurts out of the game. Washington loaded the box and said, we're going after number 26. And he was still, it was incredible blocking on that play. But the fact that he can do that on a weekly basis is just unbelievable.
That was just some old-fashioned 1930 run the GH counter. They pull the guard. They pull C.J. Uzomah with a perfect block. Everything was perfect. And it's so reminiscent, Lou. I keep talking about the Bills on this one, but you and I had the perfect all-22 back in 2018, and it was the Miles Sanders run, the first time where they run Jordan Howard on a lead pull block. And every time Saquon gets that type of run, it is some sort of pin pull counter type of easy basic run or just an outside zone where we get up to the next level and things are blocked up perfectly. So Jeff Stoutland, run game coordinator, guy just Picasso in there drawing it up every week.
We'll get into stock down as we continue to recap the Eagles' loss to the Commanders on Sunday. Coming up next, right here on Locked On Eagles.
This Christmas Eve edition of LOE is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holiday bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your pick hits, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. And with it being Christmas tomorrow, you got NBA action, you got NFL action, and you could get in on the action at Prize Picks by downloading the Prize Picks app today and using the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Yep, they're going to give you a Christmas gift if you use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
This episode of Locked On Eagles is also sponsored by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's happened to me a lot. There's a lot of subscriptions. I signed up for free trials and then never cancel them, and Rocket Money has bailed me out of some of those situations. I had a few subscriptions, like I said, that I didn't even realize I was paying for. Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together all in just one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. Like I said, I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, wrapping up this Christmas Eve edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, taking one final look back at the Eagles' loss to the Washington Commanders. Then we'll move forward. Looks like it'll probably be Kenny Pickett against the Dallas Cowboys this Sunday. Jalen Hurts still in concussion protocol, according to head coach Nick Sirianni, but the Eagles are wearing Kelly green, Gino. They're 3-0 with those jerseys. Even with Kenny Pickett, I think they'll beat the Dallas Cowboys and clinch the NFC East. So that'll be something we move forward to on tomorrow, or I should say Thursday's show with Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys. We will be off tomorrow for the holidays. But real quick, too, a couple more stock downs, because we talked already about the injuries, and I think Vic Fangio's too conservative approach to those final few drives against Jaden Daniels. I think, too, Gino, stock down to the drops, right? I mean, these stars, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, it's hard to get upset because Devontae Smith has been one of the most clutch players in football over the last 3-4 years since he's been in the league. So it's hard to get really mad at this. It feels like a one-off. But I will say this has been a couple games now where you've lost because of a Saquon drop or a Devontae Smith drop, and those weren't perfect passes from Kenny Pickett, but those guys definitely got to finish, especially with the playoffs coming up. So hopefully that was just a one-off.
A.J. Brown had a few of them there as well, and you'd like to say the defense made some good plays on the ball, but the old adage is if it hits your hands, you got to make the catch.
Yeah, and they weren't easy passes, but it's from a backup that got it there. Like, you're a star, you got to make that catch. All three of them, I think. Got
to help Kenny P out a little bit, man. And, I mean, whatever entity you believe in, you better be praying to them for this Sunday's game, man, because Kenny Pickett has got to be the guy that doesn't turn the ball over, and
that's the big part.
That really killed them was that one pick.
It crushed
them.
I totally agree. Yeah,
because if they don't get it there, that's another drive that's just not right down in the red zone, and Washington started with good field position all day long, but it happens, and it's not Nick Foles, and it's not Gardner Minshew, and it's not Marcus Mariota, but stock down to the chances of Jalen Hurts playing a 16-game season yet again, or 17 games. We're in another season where a backup quarterback is in there for a game, and an important game in the month of December, too, Lou. That's the thing, that these injuries, they come at a very bad time. It's
just the reality, man. When you invest as much as the Eagles do in mobile quarterbacks, you're going to need a good backup quarterback, and it's not always going to be Nick Foles. I think that's another thing that we have to come to terms with is you're going to get Kenny Pickett's 9.5 times out of 10 with your QB2, and it's hard to get really picky. We've been spoiled with a Nick Foles type of backup, or there's so many different. Michael Vick was a backup at one point. Nick Foles twice, actually, was a backup that took you on a big run. This is normally reality in the NFL, for sure.
It is, without a doubt, but they need to figure out how to get the offense going, especially in the second half. I would say
the game plan should be more towards Pickett, right? I think even you said in the postgame show, like, there were plays that just didn't feel like they could use because they didn't prep for Pickett being in that game.
And now with a week to prepare without potentially having Jalen Hurts, that is the situation that you are going to come across. But how weird is it that yet again, and this would be 2 out of 3 seasons, where Jalen Hurts gets injured down the stretch, backup comes in, they have a chance to clinch the NFC East in a playoff game. Back in 2022, didn't happen, and they had to bring him back for that Giants game.
Might happen again.
The exact same scenario might happen again.
Yeah, it might. And I do think, though, in the Cowboys, you got to look out. They've won, I think 4 of their last 5, or they're 7-8.
Yeah, they're playing good for McCarthy.
Their defense
at this point,
is playing well, and who knows? They might end up running it back next year with this core, which I'm cool with. But I think that's a stock up.
Them. But you got to go and compete against this Cowboys team. They're not going to roll over for you at all, man. Another divisional matchup, and you got to get Kenny Pickett ready to go. Kellen Moore really has to put together a good game plan, which I think should revolve around getting the ball out of our hand quickly. I know that even with the game plan last week when Kenny Pickett went in, they were still willing to let things develop downfield. I don't think we can do that anymore. Like, we cannot allow Kenny Pickett, one, to have that much decision making. Like, we have to be, you're throwing the ball here, or you're getting rid of the ball. We're not going through 5 progressions. Yeah, he had a lot of control,
it felt like, at the line of scrimmage, too. Like, he was making checks.
It's not Jalen Hurts, Kellen Moore. Like, stock down to our situational awareness in the second half, in my opinion. That's what really drove me nuts.
I'm going to say stock down, too, to the penalties. The Eagles, and some of it was on them. Like, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's got to keep his cool better, I think. And I love the energy.
Happen.
Yeah, I agree. But I think a couple of those, like Jalen Carter gets that unnecessary roughness on the second one where the lineman flops, and that was just a reputation call where if that's not Jalen Carter, they're probably not calling that on another player. Yep. The Eagles, actually, I saw this on X this week. For the 3 most objective penalty calls, the Eagles have benefited less than any team in the NFL. So that's when it comes to like offensive holding, defensive pass interference, roughing the passer. They're dead last when it comes to their opponent getting those calls, but the Eagles are not. So a lot of that, like you said, is they've got to be more disciplined for sure and keep their cool. But some of that is crazy where the refs just are not helping out the Eagles in any way.
There's a fine line between the fire and then being out of your mind to get those reputation calls, man. Like, there has to be that line that you walk. And yes, Jalen Carter plays with that edge, but why does he get that call, Lou? Because of things that he's done in the past.
I think Chauncey, though, and he even said it on Instagram Live after the game, he was fired up because of Jalen Hurts. He felt like he got taken out
rightfully so,
in a dirty way, and he was, that's a tough division game.
Also, don't know how you get a flag when you just say words, but somebody punches you in the face.
And then the other guy punches his helmet off, and the ref's staring at Chauncey while he gets his helmet punched off. That's what I'm saying. So, yeah, those two have to, they have that reputation for a reason. But at the same time, I think those calls, I like the fire that we got from Chauncey in that game, and that's something we wanted.
Pitbull's going to be a pitbull. Don't get mad at him when
I was more fired up last year watching the 49ers run through their workout, and the Eagles are just doing nothing about it, letting them just toss them around. I'd rather have this. So you just got to, like you said, there's a middle ground where you got to control it, though, where you're not hurting the team with penalties.
And they'll reel it in, too, and those are coachable things without a doubt, and just knowing who the referee staff is, and those are things that you point out going into games, and that'll balance itself out as well. This isn't a complete referendum on the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles. They got a lot to clean up, though, to make a run, I would say, for sure, but this might be that one, and football cliches are definitely overused, but hey, did we really want to win 13 in a row going into the playoffs, having to potentially win maybe 17 straight games to win a Super Bowl? Yeah, get that cliche loss out of the way before the playoffs.
No, that's a good way to look at it. I think they're going to bounce back this week, though. Hopefully, we'll see what happens with Jalen Hurts. Again, he's still in concussion protocol. If not, it's going to be Kenny Pickett and Kelly Green, and we'll take a look at that matchup on Crossover Thursday with Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys, and we got LOE 3 for you as well on Friday. So thanks, as always, for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day. Happy holidays, everybody, too. We'll see you for the show on Thursday, but enjoy your day on Wednesday. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks, as always, for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly, and happy holidays.